Good evening. It's Tuesday, July 14th, 2026. We're here for the Fayette County School Board Trustees Business Meeting. If we all can say the pledge of
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight we start off with the CHS Europe trip.
I'm going to turn the floor over to our presenters, but I have Mrs. Day, Mr. D, Ms. Medina, and Paco.
So, from June 18th through July 1st, which ended up being July 2nd, the three of us with two parents and 17 kids, we went to Europe, the UK, France, Belgium, and Germany. And we are here to present what you guys approved us to do. So those of us, this is Paolo Amora, the only student that came today to present to you. Mr. D, Stacy Day, and myself. And that is when we left from Cincinnati. We were here on the left side picture. All of us were so happy, not hot yet, not even in 100-degree weather, hopeful. The next picture is the one above is when we had our connection in Toronto. That international part of the airport, me personally, I hated it.
Very crowded.
It's very hectic, yes.
Yeah. It
We
wasn't
were-
on the way back though, really.
No, on the way back it wasn't. On the way there, it was awful. Like we were literally taking turns to sit. We're at the table that we found.
Wow.
And what did you eat there?
I ate a banh mi sandwich, but a couple of us encountered some problems that our cars were declining. So thankfully in the Toronto airport they did take USD. So I used 10 USD to pay for my meal, so yeah.
Yeah, and well, those flights were fine. The only thing is that the Toronto flight to London, that's where we landed in Europe, was delayed. So we got there an hour later. And this bottom picture is when we were there waiting for our bus to come and pick us up. So that was after a night of hardly any sleep.
Yes. Well, I slept it.
I did sleep. He did sleep. Okay. So our first day, we spent 2 nights in London. I don't know, someone else talk.
Okay, so this trip wasn't just like a Europe trip, it was a World War II and the Western Front. So there was a historical background to each location we went to. So in London, for example, as you can see Big Ben, we got to see a lot like the Tower Bridge, a lot of, your touristy spots. But that first day we also went to the Imperial War Museum, which contained a lot of artifacts and propaganda and whatnot from both the Allied and the Axis sides in World War II. And then the next day, the World War II highlight for that day was the Churchill War Rooms. So this secret underground bunker was discovered in the 80s after it had been locked up after World War II. And it's opened up as a museum now, and all the artifacts, the maps and everything, the layout is original from when Churchill conducted his World War II, operations down there.
Wow.
From World War II.
You can see little sugar cubes that they've been dipping and,
Yeah.
and like cigars and things like that.
Yeah.
We were told some of the stuff there was left as they left it.
Yes.
That is.
Was this in London?
It was in London, yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Then we'll take the Brittany ferry.
So then we got to travel by ferry to France. It was the first time, I think, for all of us to ever be on a ferry. It was ginormous. Like, cars could drive on it. We obviously didn't do that. But it was 6 hours.
Yes.
Yeah. So 6 hours, we got fed on the ferry. It was great. So you could go up to the deck and watch and everything. So I think that might have been a really fun day, just being on the ferry and experiencing that. Probably had the best French food we had experienced.
I would say so.
Yeah, like you wouldn't have thought the ferry would have the best food, but it did. Your turn.
Oh, he wanted to know.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Okay, I guess so. Okay, so on the ferry, where we approached was the Normandy region of France, where, as you know, that's where the D-Day invasions happened. So like, it was kind of cool when we were up on the balcony and whatnot. Our tour guide was pointing out like, oh, this is Omaha, this is Juneau, all the different beaches where the armed forces landed back in 1944. And so Normandy and Rouen, those were both really cool experiences. I think Monday, Normandy, we got to visit about like 5 different places where there was actual battles occurring. And that was really eye-opening just to see like actual German like stations where they would be shooting. Like everything was original, and we got to go like actually in it, and there were some tanks that were left over from the actual war, which is actually really cool to see. And then, as you see, that bottom left picture is the Rouen Cathedral. So we had dinner in this city, and that cathedral was once the tallest building in the world. So it was magnificent being able to go in there and experience not only the World War II sites, but also just the cultural sites that northern France had to offer. And Joan of Arc, major historical figure that was burned at the stake alive in Rouen. So there is actually a church dedicated to her there, and all lots of memorabilia and whatnot. Statue. And yes, there's not a picture of it, but I feel like the most striking part for me was visiting the American Cemetery up near Normandy, because you learn about it in history books, you hear the numbers, but when you actually get there and you see all the crosses, that, for me, that was the most touching part, especially since we were there and like they started playing the national anthem with bells.
They were doing a ceremony.
Yeah, it was real touching, yeah, so that was by far the most striking moment for me.
Yeah, also from one of the sides of the cemetery, you can see one of the landing places of the Allies. And on this trip, and the tour guide said you cannot do that anymore, but my stepdaughter was there some years ago, many years ago. And they could go from the sand on the beach, they could go up the hill following the same path that the Allies followed.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, now it's your turn.
Paris was definitely a packed day. This is where they were trying to hand over for pictures, because there was things on left and right. We were going from place to place. When we were at the Eiffel Tower, I know that a lot of them wanted to stop and take pictures, and then we divided up, and a lot of them were very enthusiastic about a bookstore that was very famous, evidently. I took that group over there, and we went to the Notre Dame. We didn't go Notre Dame, yes.
It matters.
It does, most definitely. And then from there we went to basically the what is
The
that?
Latin Quarter.
The Latin Quarter, and just went around and was shopping, and then went to some very nice parks over there. As far as the World War II theming goes, there was a lot of architecture we came across. Am I missing anything?
Well, the Eiffel Tower was used as an antenna during World War II to intercept messages from the Germans.
And then if you were watching the news, you would know that the 2 days
yeah,
we
it
were
was
there
London.
were the hottest days Paris had
Oh, yeah.
experienced in June. So, yeah.
Ever.
Yep.
And we were there.
Yep. Without air conditioning.
Oh, I guess we could talk about the train ride that we got.
Oh, the subway?
Oh yeah, that's the subway we took.
Yeah, that's
the
the
train
subway.
ride was the next
Yeah, the
place.
train is for Germany.
We had a choice. We could have went to Versailles, I think it was. Instead, we decided to not do that, and Miss Medina took all the kids to experience the
The
real.
Sacré-Cœur Basilica.
Yeah, exactly. And they greatly enjoyed that.
Yes, those.
Yeah, we got to take the subway, so that was another experience. Public transportation in Paris. And the other picture is where Napoleon is buried.
Oh my goodness.
Cologne Cathedral.
Now we have his kid one.
Which one's back?
You need to go back, so you got it.
You went for it. Can you go
You
back
went
2
for it.
slides?
Yeah,
Yep.
just like,
Okay,
there you go. So after
I
France,
lost my privileges.
after France, we went to Belgium. We stayed in 2 places there. Bastogne is where we stopped first, and we went there because the
Battle of the Bulge.
there you go, happened there. Cool thing was that our guide there was a veteran that had been a kid during the occupation. So he saw his father get killed by the Nazis, but he got first-hand stories to tell everyone, and I think that was pretty cool.
The neat thing about here too was just the American presence, because obviously we played a huge part in the Battle of the Bulge. Like there were American flags everywhere. Like they were really proud of like honoring like how we helped and like honoring that and like really, I don't know, like I feel like this was the most place we seen that still had relics. Like there were still foxholes you could go and see in the Ardennes and things like that versus other places.
Yeah, the tour guide, the one that had been there in his youth, he was talking about Band of Brothers a lot, and how they filmed a lot of scenes there.
Yeah, we also went with him to a German cemetery, and one thing that amazed me is how you can grow after you have seen everything that you have seen. Because he said when he is leading German groups into this area, these German tourists, they want to be alone at that cemetery, like they feel ashamed of what Nazis did. And he was saying they shouldn't be ashamed of that. So after what he saw and his family, his father was killed by Nazis, I think the way that he grew and was able to move on from that was amazing.
Oh, you want to do Cologne?
Yes.
Yeah, and then we went to Germany.
I actually do Cologne.
Okay.
But so the next morning we went to Cologne, and this Cologne Cathedral was another one of those cathedrals that used to be the tallest in the world from 1880 to 1890, tallest building in the entire world. And shockingly, like right after we left, they started charging people 12 euros to get in. So thankfully we got in for free because it's a really cool site. And then, so we just spent the morning there, and we had a train scheduled to Berlin, but of course the 100-degree temperatures struck once again. And this is approximately a 5-hour train ride from Cologne to Berlin. And after 30 minutes, we got off our first stop because they canceled that train line because it was so hot.
No,
There's
because
no
they're
AC.
conditioning room on the train.
There's no AC.
Yeah.
So we had to go onto another train that was fully booked and be in there for 4 hours, approximately 5 hours, but standing, lining the aisles. But we eventually got to Berlin, and me personally, I really enjoyed Berlin. There's a lot of historical things to see here, and I feel like as a whole, Germany, there was probably the most packed World War II information. So as you can see, we're posing in front of the Berlin Wall, which that portion is about 1.5 miles, which is the largest, outdoor art gallery, because instead of just leaving it as a plain wall, they let artists depict their own murals and whatnot on all of that stretch, which is really cool to see. And then, as you can see, the bottom left is Brandenburg Gate, which the wall passed right near there. So during that portion where the Soviets occupied East Berlin and the US, UK, and France occupied the West, that part really wasn't toured at all, which is arguably the most touristy part of Berlin, just because it was in that kind of demilitarized zone, if you will. But yeah, I really enjoyed Berlin.
The top
She didn't, but
The top left photo is when the Nazis started taking over and started doing their propaganda, where they cleared out the University of Books and burned them in the square.
Okay.
So that is a memorial there. Because do you remember how many books it was? It was over 100,000, right?
A lot.
It was a lot, but that was where the first book burning had taken place. And so now across the street is a little book vendor.
book sale.
Yeah, they tables set up and
Yeah.
they sell books rain or shine every
Yeah.
day,
Mhm.
and to commemorate that and be we're not gonna allow that again.
yes.
The tour guide also took us to where there is, among some buildings, there is a park. And he said that underneath there now is a parking lot, but is where Adolf Hitler's bunker was, where he committed suicide. But they didn't want to keep it as a tourist attraction because they don't want to attract the wrong kind of tourist.
Mhm.
And the bottom right picture, it was so hot in Berlin that before dinner our tour guide took us to a mall, even though he was apologizing, saying, well, this is not culture, and we told him, yes, it is culture. But yeah, so we could cool down because that's how hot it was. They when I talked to my father, he told me that the trucks that they use in Germany with water to disperse protest, they were modifying those hoses so they could use them to wet people in the street, so they wouldn't be so hot.
Yes.
So then we traveled to Nuremberg. Nuremberg is where courtroom 600 is, where the trials took place. And that, I think, was a very intense, emotional day, just to be in the court room where these trials happen. And then while we're sitting there, all of a sudden the curtains start closing and they have a video where it shows you pieces from the trial, like as if you're sitting there with it happening. And then talks about like atrocities still happening, genocide still happening, things like that. And I think we didn't know that was going to happen, but I think that was very impactful.
Yes.
And that was my favorite day, just because I felt like it was the closest we got to like history.
Do you want to?
Oh, me?
You can go.
Okay. So we also visited Dachau. I don't want to use the word excited, because it's not that I was excited about going to the camp, but I was like interested in going, because you have seen videos, you have heard testimonies of survivors, you have seen pictures, but I was thinking, how is it going to hit me, like being in the place where all these atrocities happened? And we learned that this wasn't an extermination camp, it was a labor camp, but still it was like the blueprint for all of the other camps. Most of it is destroyed, like only the crematorium and like a bunker.
The two bunkhouses are like recreations, like they were not original.
So the crematorium on the bottom left, that is original.
The gate's original.
The gate is original, oh, I can see it, yeah. And it says the phrase of work will make you free, but you cannot see it well there, but it's there. This was a memorial statue that was built after the fact. And in this one, I don't know if you can see it well, but those are where the bunkers would be for the prisoners. And then in several languages we could recognize some of them, never again. So when I was there, I was just mad and hating the world, and how can you do these things, how far can you go, like seeing people being suffering and not doing anything about it or not stopping. And I was surprised that they still had a gas chamber, even though it wasn't an extermination camp, so they would still exterminate some people. Now they also have 3 churches, so visitors go, and if they can pay the respects in a different way, go to pray and stuff, they can still do that. And there was a video also. That was the first thing that we saw, and some pictures. You could see what the beds would look like, but all those are new. They are not the original ones. But yeah, this was, I mean, I really didn't know how this was going to hit me. Oh, okay.
All right, so Munich was our last major city of the trip, and this city was occupied by after World War II, it was occupied by the US, so you saw less of that Soviet influence as you did in Berlin, since that was in East Germany. But there was still plenty of exciting places to see. So, for example, we saw, was it like Nymphenburg Palace or something?
Yeah.
It was a major palace that was built as a summer palace that was really cool to see. The bottom right picture was where the
Munich Agreement.
The Munich Agreement, which was in 1938, which basically said, Hitler, you cannot invade other countries and start a world war, which that's what Hitler did. And so Mussolini, Hitler, I think Chamberlain, and one other prominent political figure back then, on that balcony, there's a picture where you can see all 4 leaders. And Hitler was a major fan of the classical arts, so he loved like classical music and like art museums. So now that, and he hated jazz. So that building now is a jazz school, just to kind of like put it in Hitler's face. So I thought that was pretty funny. And then that middle picture of us, that is at the Eagle's Nest, which is where a lot of prominent Nazi officials had their vacations, which is almost on the border of Austria, but it was really striking to see. It was very beautiful. We went on a beautiful day, and it was a really good end to our trip. And yeah.
That's the Olympic torch from where Munich held the Olympics.
Yes.
I don't remember what year.
1972.
Okay.
And the tour guide is there also in that picture.
Yes, our tour guide,
Sweden.
yes.
Yep,
He's very good.
that's Mr. D.
He's in the back with his sunglasses.
Yeah, I
He's
see.
right by you, I think.
I see.
That one.
Okay.
And then we got to fly back from Munich to Toronto. That flight went very well, perfect, got on time, got to our gate on time. And at the gate in Toronto, our flight gets being delayed and delayed and delayed. And finally I got to the desk and I asked them, do you think we are flying tonight? And they said, probably not. So we got to stay in Toronto, so one more country that we hit. Everyone got their own room at a Sheraton hotel, which was very nice. We got some food vouchers, and the day after we all got cramped in the shuttle, that is the middle picture. And when I say that, like we were getting the smaller kids and putting them in between two seats, because we all had to be in that shuttle, because we had to get to the airport, go through security again, and get on our flight back home.
Which we did.
Yes.
We did, yep. And that's the end of our trip. So if you have any questions.
I'll say, if you ever want to see any more pictures too, we have
Oh, yeah.
a ton. We just didn't want to, we just want to keep it to one slide per city, because otherwise we'd be here all night.
Were most of the students seniors that went?
They were all
Oh, yeah.
Graduated? Oh, they were all seniors who had
Yes.
just graduated, okay.
Paula, how do you think what you saw in Europe affected you? Because we are such a young country at 250 years old.
Mhm.
And I've been to Europe and I love seeing some of these pictures again. I was about your age when I went.
Mhm.
I'm just real curious to see, how this is going to impact you and your perspectives on the world.
Mhm.
Because we're young and these people are incredibly old
Yes.
by comparison.
Yeah, definitely coming back here, I've had a lot of just thinking in my mind, like how impactful this experience was, not just learning about the history, but also like what I can learn here. Because you think these countries are just the size of our states, yet their cultures, they're entirely different. But they coexist and they like respect each other, and they're allowed to have open borders and just share their cultures and whatsoever. So I think coming back here, that just makes me appreciate what America has become and how it has opened up, like inviting a lot of different cultures and whatnot, just to appreciate that more. And I think that's the biggest thing that I came to appreciate about here, because there's just so many languages, so many cultures that you get to see on a daily basis here, where over there you don't necessarily see as much of like different cultures, because each country is like kind of totally different. It's not like states here, but I'd say that's the biggest thing.
I just want to say thank you to you guys for making this happen and planning, and I know it's a lot of work, and we talk a lot about the importance of helping our students develop a global perspective, and because life in Connersville is way different than life outside of Connersville, and certainly much different than life outside of the country. And so thank you guys for giving them this opportunity. We'll hear next month from our trip that we had some kids that went to Panama and Costa Rica, which is certainly a much different global perspective than going to Europe. But yeah, so we have another trip planned, right?
Yes.
Yes, and that is
Next year.
to
England, France, and Italy.
Okay, so similar trip.
Yeah.
But you're going to Italy.
Yes.
Okay.
It's
Is there
mostly
a
in
theme?
Italy.
Is there a theme?
No.
Oh, okay.
This
Not a
is
World
The
War II.
touristy sites this time, because
Okay.
we're doing Venice and Pompeii
Okay.
and Rome. I think
Okay.
it was Venice might
Where
disappear.
are you going in England? You going up in the Lake
London.
District?
No, just London.
Oh.
The beginning is the same, but in Paris we are going to see Le Louvre.
Okay.
And Versailles.
And we are going to Versailles.
Yeah.
also.
We're going to Versailles.
If you need chaperones, let me know.
Yeah. Let all of us know for that matter.
And I want to say, Paulo, great job. But we're
Oh, thank
really
you.
proud of you, and you're so well spoken. And
Thank
tell us again, you're going to school to be a pediatrician, is that right?
Yes, IU Bloomington, biology pre-med with a minor in music.
Yeah, really proud of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Wonderful.
much. Yeah, thank you.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I so moved.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Any discussion? Motion carries. Consent agenda, approval of minutes from the regular business meeting of June 9th, 2026, executive meeting on June 9th, executive session on June 30th, and special session on June 30th. Personnel report, approval of June 2026 claims 73917 to 74146, Shield and Spear donation. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I so move.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Any discussion? Consent agenda carries. Action items, approval of strategic planning. Mr.
Yeah, I'm just gonna pass things off to
Yeah, okay.
Lauren,
That
so.
works, I'm ready. Hello, everyone. While I am here in the strategic planning capacity, I would absolutely be remiss if I did not acknowledge I had 2 kiddos on that trip. A trip of a lifetime, and I hate that they left, but I think I speak for all parents involved. While they may have graduated as freshly graduated seniors, they're still our kiddos, and that meant we were worrying right after graduating them, sending them across the country. Miss Day, Miss Medina, Mr. D, there was a couple parents that went along. Everybody kept us informed, even with the hiccups they had along the way that they so politely shared about. We were informed, our kids had a great time. I picked them up from the airport a day late, and one of mine said, give me 7 days sleep and I'm ready to go again. So it was a great trip, no complaints about all the things, so I want to just acknowledge that. Thank you, Ms. Flum, of course, for giving that opportunity, all of you for supporting that. I most definitely know the value that you all find in those global opportunities, learning outside of the classroom, and I know, just like Paulo had stated, that's carrying my daughters off to college with a different perspective at IU also, to be able to go in with a scope of knowledge outside of where they are. So I wanted to start off with that. But if you can't tell, I am so absolutely ecstatic to be in front of you all in this capacity, ultimately seeking approval on our first Fayette County School Corporation strategic plan. And so I do believe the first thing I want to call attention to before I kind of go through a brief presentation is what you all have in front of you is our what we are seeking approval on, the content. I know, and Jeremy will echo this, we are going to transition this to the marketing side of it, the implementation. So I'm going to be very cognizant as we walk through today that what we are seeking approval on is the content. We will do that kind of marketing review of grammar, if we have repetitive kind of language that we want to tweak, but I can assure you we will not be editing any of the content. So I want you just to keep that in mind as we go through. I'm going to see if I can navigate the, okay, perfect. That's the first one of the day. As we dive in, this document should look familiar to you. As you all know, this plan wasn't built overnight. It was built with a deliberate process that we scoped out initially well over a year ago when I was given the opportunity to work with you all. And we were very candid about that this was kind of the blueprint that we were going to use. But, and I know sometimes it's not what people want to hear, there are no rules in strategic planning. There are no right or wrong. Therefore, that left, admittedly, gray area. It was fuzzy, right? We didn't know, all we knew is where we were going to end up. The process that took us there may look differently. It's not always linear, but of course we had that blueprint. And so this is that scope that we walk through. And just very briefly, that current state started with you all. That was that board retreat, quite literally almost 1 year, probably almost to the day at this point, where you all set that foundational direction for the strategic plan. It's never lost on me that, strategic planning, the process, the facilitation is not in everybody's, inherent wheelhouse. It's something that a lot of us probably went through for the very first time. So it may have very well felt very confusing and fuzzy a year ago when we started this process, having yourselves question, how's this going to breed a strategic plan? I hope when we get to the point of approval, you can say, I get it. It's not fuzzy anymore. It makes sense why you came with those 900 sheets of white paper and all those dots and the markers. But we started with you all to get that current state. And that was very intentional because we know we had to have that foundational direction. And from there, that's where we were going to move to that stakeholder input. That's where we shifted to the directional team. That's where we shifted and ultimately got to our community survey. We needed to start getting those community voices. We needed to get the voices of our educators that are in the classroom. And so we were gathering all of that input. That's very intentional to make sure that we can accurately say, we have a communal voice. We asked, we took that, we heard what came back on the survey, and we built our plan off of it. So we wanted to have as much stakeholder input as we could. Then we moved to the strategy mapping and kind of the feedback. That's kind of where we put our nose down. The directional team, again, I want to say a tremendous thank you to them because they really dove in. You know, it was hours set in this room with them with those large sheets of paper. It was multiple hours on a professional development day while they were already doing all kinds of valuable things to really put their heads down and help go through that content. We dove through the data that came through on the survey. We heard what you all said. We heard what they're hearing in the classrooms. And we did that strategy mapping. And quite literally, all those papers and kind of were spider webbing that out on what that looked like to support the strategic plan. And what we did with all of that is we moved that over to the plan development. That is where we actively said, what are the things that came up through all of these conversations, all of this work, all of the feedback on the survey? What are the most valuable things, not only to you all, but to our community? And that's where those pillars bubbled up. We didn't just arbitrarily pull those. Those things came up time and time again as the most important things to everybody involved. And of course, then our strategies and kind of all the content of the plan was built in that area. Again, that was collaborative. You all know those surveys that you all took part in, all of our working sessions together. Same thing with the directional team. So much work in the meetings, but then not only that, outside of the meetings. You all know a good survey will get a lot of information, and they dove in just the same on that. And then ultimately, that led us to where we are now for the final version of that strategic plan. And I don't have to tell you all that that wasn't something that was just arbitrarily put out. That was built up through countless hours and work and content and complete intentionality with community voices, workforce partners, internal, your voices, excuse me, but that plan that you all have in front of you is intentional as it could be. And so this is that scope of that development plan. Projects are not linear. We know that. We knew that timelines kind of adjusted. We kind of adapted our plan. We changed the structure of the plan based on the needs. One of those big things where we talked about the need of having the board-supported strategy. Because what we heard time and time over again were those really important things like facilities, transportation, structures, all of those things that honestly our educators can support, but you all have that complete oversight. So we knew we needed as much board support as we could. So that plan, the structure we thought for our plan, changed along the way. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. But that is that kind of roadmap that we set forth, and I'm very happy to say that we made it all the way through. Any questions on this of kind of as we walk through this whole journey? Okay. This is my favorite here. So I'm going to ask you all to humor me. This is the work behind the plan. Excuse me. This is, we started, that timeline tells us what we did. These numbers demonstrate the depth of that work behind it. You all know, over 12 months ago, we started this planning and collaboration. For you all, that's probably 4 to 6 months even earlier. You started having the conversation of the needs of setting forth a strategic plan for the corporation. 9 in-person directional team meetings, including that professional development day where they all volunteered their time, right, to be part of this, and they were such active participants. That equated to over 14 hours of facilitated directional team work. While they were very devoted, very open, honest conversations working through with myself and, of course, Jeremy. That was also 8 directional team surveys and feedback opportunities. So they engaged outside of those meetings, outside of the classroom also. We had over 8 hours together collectively. We started off with that board retreat. You all gave up tremendous amount of time of those working sessions, which I know ran very late with all the other things you had on your agenda, where we all dove in collectively. You all additionally engaged with 3 surveys and feedback opportunities where you all gave that tremendous kind of feedback that we needed to take the plan and move it forward. Over 580 community survey responses, tremendous amount of feedback and data for you all to not only use for the plan, but for all things moving forward. That was a fantastic tool. I had to throw this one in because I know there's got to be someone who loved to see me coming with those large sheets of paper. 87 25 by 30 inch strategy sheets and documenting for documenting ideas and topics. Ask me how I know that. It's because I have every single one of those. Much to my kids, groans as I would come home from the meetings. I'm like, get those out of the car, hold them up so I can document them. They blanket my office on a regular basis as I'm cataloging them. 87. I think someone made the comment, that we've all been part of those facilitated sessions where after you have those sheets, they come right off the wall and they go in the trash, right? I can assure you that did not happen with any of ours. They've been cataloged for future use, and every piece, and I say this with the absolute most sincerity, every piece of our strategic plan lives on one of those 87 sheets of paper. I know this because I also went through and wanted to find those and can see all of those, but that bred your strategic plan. So they were very intentional. I know that may have felt fuzzy of why is she asking us? Why are we doing this? Why didn't I tell her this already? It all was a purpose. It all followed. Each time we did a facilitated session, each time we had a working session, they each built upon each other to get us to that final strategic plan. Again, hundreds of generated ideas, thousands of comments and discussions that we went through in those meetings and those hours together. And then countless amount of leadership conversations, email back and forth with Jeremy and myself, meetings. What do you think about this? What is our thought on this? And that ultimately leads us to one shared direction for the future of our students. I think that is because it feels lost on us when you're in the process of, okay, we're doing this, we're going through, but that's all the work behind your plan. And that's tremendous. And that's what we want to share. Someone who may not be privy to this process in the community may say, how'd they do that? Did they sit in a room and did they just create that plan? We absolutely did not. And so we want to make sure that we share that. One thing that I'm especially proud of is that every pillar, every strategic priority, and every board commitment, your board-supported strategies in this plan can be traced back to that work. Like I said, it lives in those sheets. Nothing was added simply because it was a catchphrase or it sounded great, and very admittedly, we removed things that we thought were too overused. We said we didn't want to say culture, climate. We don't want to have things where people say, I've heard that, we've done that. Every piece of the plan was done with intentionality in this work behind the plan. I don't have to tell you all, we live in a time where you could throw this in an AI resource and you could generate a strategic plan in 5 minutes and there would be no me and we wouldn't need this. But what we can say is that's absolutely not what happened. Your plan was built out of intentionality. It was built by asking the community and your internal staff and faculty what they felt. It was built solely around what matters the most to our students. And I think this really shows this as we go through. Any questions on this?
That's good.
Okay, so let's talk about our framework. All of that led us to our framework of our plan. And it was and is intentionally simple, focused, and actionable. We had tremendous amount of conversation when we were in our drafting sessions of, if I was a parent, would I connect to that? If I was a parent, would that resonate? Are we overcomplicating? Can we just say, quite simply, we want our students to grow and achieve? And we started out really fancy and elaborate, and we said, what are we doing? That's what we want our students to do. When we're talking about Pillar 1, grow and achieve, that was ensuring every student grows academically, achieves success, and reaches their full potential academically and personally, right? That's what we want them to do. We want them to grow and achieve. And how we landed on those pillars is the information that came back on the surveys. It's the information that came up time and time again in those facilitated sessions. We could not avoid those pillars. They are those foundational items that we have to do. We have to make sure that every one of our students in our corporation grow and achieve. We have to make sure they feel like they belong and they thrive. And ultimately, we have to make sure that they are prepared and life ready. And that was the foundation of our plan. When we're talking about belong and thrive, that was all centered around creating safe, supportive environments where every student feels valued, connected, and empowered to thrive in whatever that is. And then Prepared and Life Ready, quite honestly, this is the one that was a no-brainer. This stuck from the get-go, and it said this has to be part of our plan. We want every graduate, no matter what their path is, when they leave the school corporation and when they graduate, we want them to be prepared and life ready. That's preparing every student with the knowledge, skills, and experiences needed for success beyond graduation. And those became those foundational pillars that this is what we stand for as a corporation. And then we moved on to those strategies as we bred those up. Those are those strategic priorities. When we were working together, I would always preface it, what do we have to get right? What do we have to focus on, or we can't make sure that our students grow and achieve? And in the exact same manner, that's how we got these strategic priorities. Viable curriculum. We could not, that has to be one of the top things that we are focusing on academically. Expanded opportunities and experiences. We wanted, just like we talked about with the class trip, we wanted to make sure they had those opportunities outside of the classroom. High quality educators and instruction, and then also highlighting success. Those are those big buckets that we knew we had to succeed on. Those were the strategies. We were going to dive into those areas to be able to say we're focusing on our students to grow and achieve. And in the same focus, we couldn't do that alone. Our educators could not do that without the support of you all. But we also know there is, things that fall under your purview, and there's things that fall with the educators. And so with that, we created those board-supported strategy. That's your commitment to the strategic plan, to the students of our corporation, of how you are going to support them. And for Pillar 1 of Grow and Achieve, that's that resource stewardship. That is where you all are going to make sure you are the best stewards financially, human, operational, facility to make sure that you can support that they can grow and achieve. And that is all around the Pillar 1 on that foundational Grow and Achieve. Same thing with Belong and Thrive. This is where we said that we wanted to focus on early identification and intervention. This is when we were thinking of the whole child supports. Very early on, that came up as a focus, that this needed to be outside of that academic focus. How do we support wholly with that? Safe and supportive environments. That was one that we said we have to also get right with this. Family and community partnerships. If we think back to some of that survey data, that was huge. We want our parents to feel connected. We want them to know that they're being communicated with. Transparency, all of those things came up that we wanted to make sure that we were making sure that we focus on there. And then pathways to possibility. We wanted to make sure that our students know that there are, just like we said, there are things outside of Connors. There are paths. There are experiences that they can take, and we wanted to afford them those opportunities. And along with that board-supported strategy was student-centered operational excellence. Your students are always at the thought as you're making these decisions. How can we make these decisions to support their growth on that? And then our third pillar, which was Prepared and Life Ready, top absolutely in all of our data, all of our conversations, was the need for real-world skills. That was probably the most common response. We have to prepare them with those real world skills. And so that is one of those strategic priorities we said we absolutely have to get right. Along with career exploration and pathway development, authentic learning experiences where they can connect, they feel value in their education, which was a huge conversation we had early on of we need them to feel that it's valuable. We want the parents of these children to feel that there's value in their education. And then ultimately, accountability and responsibility. That is one we want to instill in our students. And for your support for that, that was strategic partnerships and sustainability. We know that you all have that governance. You have the ability to foster those relationships, to cultivate, to try to engage them with the corporation. And those are those partnerships that are very strategic and they're sustainable that you can help cultivate, creating those students to be prepared and life ready. Any questions on the framework of the plan? I know we looked at, especially, I know Leslie being part of the directional team, we looked at many different plans. We looked at different framework. And ours doesn't look like everybody else's. And I'm so glad that ours doesn't. Jeremy and I just had this conversation of that we were so pleasantly pleased with the added addition of the board-supported strategy, of how well that ties it in. Because our educators can't thrive the way they need to if they don't have the support of you all. Our students can't thrive without the additional support too. So we're really excited to have that additional commitment from you all to support the plan. This framework provides more than a strategic plan. It's that shared direction. It's where every one of our educators see those beautiful billboards that say belong and thrive and grow and achieve and prepared and life ready. They could tell you what those pillars are. They know what the corporation stands for. That's what we want this strategic plan to be. We want them all to know that you listened to their voice, that you didn't sit here arbitrarily at the leadership level, but you built this strategically with everyone's input.
Awesome.
Okay, you all know what this is. This is the wonderful portrait of a graduate. Ultimately, everything in our strategic plan points to one outcome, and it's our portrait of a graduate, right? While the new corporation vision statement is still being finalized, it is being developed alongside our strategic plan. Together with our portrait of a graduate, it will create a clear and concise foundation. So we are actively kind of cultivating that to go out with our marketing of the strategic plan. Our vision statement defines the future that we're building. Our strategic plan is that roadmap, right? That's how we're going to get there. And our portrait of a graduate defines the student that we're building it for. And so that is exactly what we wanted. The only type, and we've had this conversation, we took that data from the survey. Overwhelmingly, 85% agreed that this is exactly what our graduates should be. This is our focus. We just had some visual kind of pieces that we may adjust. But this will also go right at the end of the strategic plan because this is what we are striving for, that every graduate is just that. Jeremy, anything to add with Portrait of a Graduate?
No. I think you did it well.
Okay, wonderful. You all have heard me, like a broken record, that our strategic plan has to be a living document, right? It cannot just sit idly on a shelf. That is what happens at, admittedly, quite a lot of institutions. We go through all this work, we say, great, we have this beautiful, marketing plan, it's all nice and fancy, and then what do we do with it? What I can assure you, that has been on our forethought, that's been on our minds from the entire time. So that is something that we built into the strategic plan. We built action. We knew when we built this out that we could take this straight into action planning. This only matters, your strategic plan only matters if it leads to action. That's the way we make that living document. This is where we are going to start executing that strategic plan. And that starts with the school action plans. That's something I shared with you the last time we were together, that we know that some strategic plans set those measurable actions from the top level. We had lots of conversation how that was not the most valuable thing that we could do, because how can we set that at the leadership, the top level, and then have that roll down to all the different elementaries, all of our middle schools, to the career center, and it be meaningful to them. So we were very intentional about essentially giving them that North Star of where we were going, but we wanted to make sure that the true action comes from them. They know the uniqueness of their students, of their buildings, of their educators, and so that's that next phase where it becomes that actionable piece. We're going to take that down to the schools and let them create their action plans. That's where, for example, we'd want Eastview to say, we're doing this. We are going to increase this from X to Y, and it supports Pillar 1, the strategy around this. And we want them to connect their work to the pillars. When you have those fantastic groups standing up here every board meeting and saying, we're doing this, we're looking into this, we want them to say, and it supports Pillar 1. It does this to support this strategy. All the work anyone is doing in the corporation ultimately should come back to our strategic plan if we've done it right? That's what we want. Early on, I asked you all at the board retreat, if we do this right, what will it look like? If you think back to it. We want to hear about us doing it right by the projects that are happening, the really great stories that are coming. So we're going to have them identify those school-specific action plans. And those are measurable. Leslie, you did a great job of kind of keeping that at a forefront. How do we measure? How do we know we are we're succeeding? That's how we're going to be. We're going to have those action plans that are bred up and they're measurable action steps. And then that gives those success measures. That gives outcome-focused metrics. Someone asks us, well, what are you doing for the strategic plan? How do I know it's working? Well, this is happening at this school to support it, this is going on, and this is going on. We'll have those metrics. It'll give us those KPIs, we'll have those tangible things that we can look back at when we review them and say, yes, we know we're actively working on it. Additionally, that comes to you all and leadership at each school to have annual review and continuous improvement. This is where we want this to be part of conversations yearly. We want the leadership to be sitting with their educators and saying, how are we succeeding on this? Where are we at? Do we need to revisit something? How are we doing our part to support this strategic plan? And then ultimately, it ends up with student impact. This is where we have stronger schools. We have supported educators who feel heard because what they need is they're getting that support via the strategic plan and you all. Higher achievement and growth for our students, expanded opportunities, and of course, we are then preparing all of our graduates in the way that we say means the most to us. But this is how we take that from that beautiful plan that we are going to have to action here. So next steps. This is where we are going to shift into, once hopefully we get approval tonight, we're going to shift to that marketing, design, and publication. Jeremy and I have had some conversations. I know you guys are gonna hit it out of the park with the marketing end of this. We've already started, but that's when we're gonna get that beautiful publication to really showcase the hard work that went with this. And then when the academic year kicks off, that's when we're gonna have our corporation rollout. This is where we want every educator in the corporation to hear about this plan. We want them to say, gosh, I do that to support that. Wow, I've been wanting to look into this. We want to really energize that corporation rollout. The next piece is something that Jeremy and I have talked about, and I think if it comes to fruition, I think it'll be a great ad. But the value in having a community partner launch. This is where we say, we can't work in a silo to advance the strategic plan. We want our workforce partners. We want our dual credit partners. We want individuals in the community to get energized about our strategic plan. Because if we are producing these well-rounded, portraits of a graduate, they win. They have well-rounded individuals coming into the workforce, people living in our community. So we have talked about hopefully getting kind of a community partner launch to be able to kind of kick off that strategic plan past the corporation doors. And then, like I just stated, that moves to that school-based action planning. That will move down where they all can start feeling connected and connect their work to that. And then that is that ongoing monitoring and accountability where you all will set those kind of benchmarks of reviewing, checking in with that, talking to schools about how they're advancing, but that's that ongoing piece of it. And then also as part of the next phase, we collectively, you're not done with me yet, we will continue to work together to work on the value of having your own, as the board's mission statement, and potentially your own action plan where you have some goals set for yourself. To be able to say that not only are we asking the schools to hold themselves accountable for advancing the plan, you all are also doing the same thing. So those are those next pieces that we're moving to for that. I know you maybe some of you all were wishing this, but the work doesn't really end with the approval of the plan here. It really just begins, quite honestly. I know you feel like you all have went for a tremendous, and you have done a tremendous amount of work, but the true value of the plan will be measured in what we do next, right? It will be how well it's received. It's how well we communicate it out, how well we show the value of this plan, how much it means to you all. We have to make sure that we hit the mark on that to bring it to life each day in your schools, in our students, in our educators, and our community. So while I am seeking approval of the plan, I also am kind of asking for the green light to go to the real work.
One thing I like about the whole thing, and it kind of took one of the directional team meetings, one of the teachers, and then I think Jeremy also reiterated it. The teacher said, we're already doing these things, and we just haven't been using this language to describe it. And I think that's what Jeremy's point was, is using the language in our marketing, but also using the language in our board meetings when we do presentations that align, when we're presenting data, that we're looking at, you know, this is under the Grow and Achieve pillar. This information we're presenting, such as we have the presentation tonight, which fits under the expanded opportunities and experiences. So I think knitting that all together, and I know that the preschool already began looking at their portrait of a graduate. I don't know if the other buildings have, but as a board, I hope we get to hear about that, how each building is utilizing the strategic plan within their walls.
Absolutely.
And how it's being communicated amongst the staff and flourishing, you know, with our students. So I am looking forward to that next phase.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what we want. Additionally, we don't want to just keep this in the document. We want this to live on the website. We want people to be able to look up what we stand for. Hopefully get those action plans out on the website where anybody can go to Eastview's website, Grandview's, and say, this is what they're doing to support. We really have, for the success of this plan, it has to be common language. We all have to speak the same language. We have to talk pillars. We want anybody in our corporation to be able to say, these are the pillars, this is what it means, this is how I connect to it. And you're exactly right, Leslie. You all, as a board, as supporters of this, we want to talk the language. Ask your presentations. What do you think this supports for our strategic plan? So people see that connection and the value.
I do want to say, you're right about those things that we already do,
Absolutely.
right, that do fit. But I do believe that the plan should change behaviors, right? Even if it's just reframing what's important, right? Because if we're going to say that we want our kids to be effective communicators, but we're not giving kids a regular opportunity in the classroom to do that, then we need to look at our practices, right? And we need to find opportunities for those kids to do things that are different. And sometimes even it's the things that we did before that are no longer important or relevant because they don't fit within these strategies and these things that are important for us. And so it's a filter behind which all decisions can be placed to say, you know, where does it fit? You know, as we talk about the trip those kids took, I mean, it certainly fits in many areas here as far as why it's important to us and why we should give those kids that opportunity. In fact, so much so that, like, I almost look at it and think, how do we give more kids that opportunity? How do we make it a goal of ourselves as a corporation to say that we would love for every student by the time they graduate as 12th graders to have one opportunity to leave the country? I'm not saying we're going to do that because that would be very difficult, right? But gosh, how awesome would that be, right? But we've made it the North Star, and therefore, what are we going to do to make sure that we have systems built to help us get there? One of the things I was most impressed by, I saw Buddy Berry today, by the way, and you went on that Buddy Berry trip, right?
Yeah, but what did...
He was at Joy Jam.
Oh, okay.
But one of the things they've done is they've actually built exemplars for each of those areas that they feel like are so important. And so when they say, you know, effective communication is important, like what does that look like for a first grade student, a second grade student, a third grade student? And so that's the work that is to come, is really putting that work on the ground, as Lauren said, at each of our buildings to say, how does it come to life, right? And it should, to some degree, like I said, change the things that we do because it reframes what's important. Whereas 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, and maybe even more recent history, you know, the I Learn test that we take at the end of the year was the most important thing, right? Which is still important, right? Academic achievement matters. Obviously, our portrait tells us that. But these other things are so important as well. And we haven't necessarily always built systems to make sure that they live there and that they're taught, practiced, and applied. Like that hasn't always been the norm in public education. And so it's reframing what's important. I hope that makes sense.
I also like the idea that each school is going to come up with its own strategic plan based on the pillars, because every school with their population is a little bit different. Culturally, they're a little bit different. Certainly, sometimes there's academic challenges. For example, we will have our special education kids over at Eastview. So their priorities and their challenges are going to be a little bit different than at Fayette Central or Frazee that does not have that population. And to be able to adapt those to meet the needs of the kids that are right there. And I think I agree with Leslie. we're doing it because each of the elementary schools has instituted programs to fit their particular group of kids, that what their particular needs are. We've had those presentations from Grandview, from Everton, things that the kids have done that support these pillars. But I think that it's just really important that this isn't a one-size-fits-all type situation, and we don't have one-size-fits-all kids.
Absolutely.
And to recognize that on a basically a corporate level, I think is very important, because there's too much competition out there, as we are incredibly well aware of. So what makes us better than somebody else? Why should you send your kid here rather than allow them to go someplace else? And I think these kinds of plans and how they've been put together are going to really, really help that out in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. It was it was an active conversation of, we have to pick these strategies that encompass and everybody can relate to. If you are at Little Spartan, if your child is in the elementary, if you are a middle school student, you will admittedly see strategic plans that have those objectives, those metrics right out the gate. And they are at institutions, a lot of times that's higher ed, where they can have those high-level metrics that everybody can find their direct line up to. I cannot imagine if you set forth a strategic plan that said, every school must do this to this by this, and you're going to have people that say, I can't connect to that. How do I find the value in that? And this is that part where I'm so ecstatic that you all leaned into kind of that fuzzy gray area and created a plan that fits for you all. Because you have found a way that you can take it to the next steps where those schools can say, I'm going to find how we support with our uniqueness and make sure that we have that connectedness at our level. And that may look different at another school, but we're all supporting the strategic plan with the work that we do. So that was very intentional. That wasn't something that arbitrarily happened. And I want to applaud you all for having that on your mind the entire time through this process. Any other questions? Anything that I can answer? Jeremy, anything to add that I didn't touch
I
on?
don't think so. We thank you for your hard work. You do a great job.
This is
It's wonderful working with you, and it's nice to have somebody that's vested, that's in the community, that obviously has a vested interest by the children that just graduated, but you have a little one too.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
it matters, and so thank you for your work throughout the process. And like Lauren said, it's not done, it's a fluid document. We'll make it look pretty, and we'll make sure it's well communicated and all of those things, but thank you for your work up to this point. So we would ask for your approval tonight of what you see as far as the basic framework of the strategic plan as presented.
May I have a motion to approve this strategic planning document? Oh,
Go ahead, I can second.
I make that motion.
May I have a second? All in favor? Any discussion? Motion carries. Approval of the strategic planning document.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
The next action item, elementary CMS, CHS, WCC handbook, student code of conduct, bus regulations, and ridership guidelines.
There's a lot there, isn't there? So that is before you. We brought these before you in our last meeting. Some changes that were made, but you have before you the red line version of the documents. I believe they're all red line versions. So you can see those changes. Had some changes obviously to the attendance guidelines based upon some statutory changes. Obviously had some changes to the cell phone stuff that we've talked about. And then yes, lockers per the high school. Kelly's here. The bag changes. I know Kelly and I, Ms. Flum and I put out a video this past week to hopefully clarify some things as far as the bag rules. Long story short, the decision was made based upon the safety of our kids, right? And so students may bring a backpack as they have always to school, right? That is not clear. That has to go inside of a locker. If they're to carry a backpack all around all day, then they have to have one that was translucent in some way. It can be mesh or clear, either one. Trying to think of other changes. Kim
I
obviously.
did have
is
a
not here this
question.
evening.
Somebody
Yeah,
asked me about watches, smart watches. So I don't know if that was, excuse me, directly communicated in your video. I think it was I don't know if it was mentioned.
It probably wasn't.
Yeah.
I have a district-wide letter I'm gonna put out that does describe that cellular communication device ban, because we do tend to say cell phone.
Yeah,
But the reality of
right.
the law states any wireless communication device, it could be a tablet, it could be smart glasses, it could be smart watches, it could be lots of different things. All of those things, according to law, are not permissible from bell to bell sort of data.
And how are we gonna monitor that? I mean, my watch is not a smartwatch, but it looks like a smartwatch, so, well, it's semi-smart, but it's not. I guess it is a smart, I never look at it, but I can get texts on there, I just never look at it, so I guess it is a smart one, it's just
Yeah.
not an Apple Watch.
My thought on that is that we're not, I don't want to ask my teachers to be police officers and those things. I mean, the intent of the law is to decrease those distractions to the educational process. I'm wearing one right now. I haven't looked at it since I've been in here. In fact, I think it's dead. So, but if I were here doing this, that'd be a different conversation. And I'm guessing most of them function off of the signal from a cell phone anyway. And so if the cell phone is put away as it should be, then it shouldn't function, although some do use a wireless signal as well. So it's one of those things, you know, we're gonna do our best.
Yeah.
We're hopeful that our students will be compliant with that. I know it's gonna be a huge learning curve, or I don't know, in some ways, you know, there's a biological side of this that is the addiction side. And I don't use that word lightly, I really don't, that we're gonna have to be working through with our students. That does worry me a little bit, just because I think that's gonna be a difficult thing for kids to get used to, because they've grown up with those as part of their lives.
In the middle school policy, it talks about earbuds and headphones as well.
Yep.
Do we have a certain number of our middle and high school kids who, I want to say mental health, but also for our kids on the spectrum who sometimes need to have just that background noise in order to function? How will that, and these are kind of tougher
Yeah, the students who
areas.
have a 504 AP,
Okay,
that
they
can
can
be
keep
written in,
those.
and that can be an exemption for
Okay.
that. Other students, I'd have to read the statute as far as how exactly it's worded.
I
for
just saw that
earbuds.
in the,
But
middle
that
school.
would be considered a wireless communication device, and so therefore
Yeah.
allowed.
Okay.
So, yeah.
But a lot of the kids actually that are auditory learners, that's how their information is presented to them.
I think there has to be some common sense that's utilized in our classrooms, and if it's good for kids in the classroom with their teachers, I think there's some discretion there in collaboration with our principals, to make those decisions educationally.
One of the really good sessions I went to at the last convention in Louisville was from people in Tennessee, in Clarksville, Tennessee. And they had just gone to this, and the superintendent was very honest in saying the first 6 weeks were really ugly. But after that time, and then they interviewed kids and actually brought it into the session. And they said they didn't like it at all at the beginning. But once they kind of got used to it, the pushback became less and less. And by the end of the school year, there were even some that would almost admit it was a good idea. And it was across the board. It was freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. So, and it was a school corporation that was demographically about the same as ours. But the superintendent says when Tennessee first came out with it, he thought, what did you just do to me? But once the kids, it had to be pretty strict enforcement to begin with. But it was like, yeah, and they began to talk to one another, and the discipline problems decreased, and also the test scores seemingly went up. So I think it's a win-win, but we've got to get through that.
Sure.
We've got to get through that other period first.
May I have a motion to approve the elementary CMS CHS WCC handbook student code of conduct bus regulation and ridership guidelines.
I'll make that motion.
May I have a second?
I have another question.
Discussion.
I have another question. Okay, I noticed at CHS that impact has moved back to the end of the day again. Is this because of the issues we ran into last year with the WCC students? Okay, all right. And also, I had another question about, where was it? Here, I'll find it in a second. Oh, on the,
Was it vaping?
yeah, it was on the vaping situation. This unfortunately is kind of a big issue out in the community. Some people are very, very concerned about this. What kind of enforcement things have we done? My problem is this is against the law, and even when I was in school, it was against the law to smoke. And that was a big deal. If you got caught smoking, there were some pretty serious consequences to that. But they had to find the currency, and the currency at that time was a $10 citation fine that you had to pay. And in 1966, $10 was a lot of money, and it was a deterrent. Have we determined what the currency is for these kids? And can we use this as a deterrent?
So currently, if a student is caught with a vape, they can be issued a ticket from the SRO because it is illegal. In lieu of a ticket, they can take a cessation course with the health department. So missing from the health department comes to the high school. Students who have been caught take that course, they must pass it. If they don't pass it, then the ticket goes into effect. That's the first offense. Progressively, it goes up after the second, third offense.
Okay, did we issue any citations this year for vaping?
So we did not issue any citations because students that were caught took the class and passed the course.
Okay. It's like, this is a big issue kind of out in the community, and we know from a health perspective, having kids do this is terrible. And my generation found out that smoking was not good for it very late.
I can also tell you, we had Patty Robinson came and did some preventative work with our freshmen this year as well, so.
Good. Okay, that was my only question on that, because the wording in the handbook is kind of vague on what happens. It's not terribly specific. It just says these are our options of what we're going to do. And I was just looking to make sure we had a more structured format, because again, you got to find the currency, what those kids, what's important to them, and take it away from them for their own good. Okay, thank you.
Good questions, thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Public comments. A person wishing to make the board aware of suggestion, ideas, and/or comments may address the board at this time. Comments which involve personnel or students must be discussed in private. ISBA report.
I just saw, as you all probably saw, that people can now register for the state conference. So, I don't remember the dates, but the second Sunday or Monday in October, and I can't remember the date.
5th and 6th, I think.
Yeah, something like that. So, yeah, I'm sure we'll get an email out and just get ready to sign up. The only other thing happening with ISBA is there is a Q&A webinar coming up for our legal folks. But otherwise, it's relatively
Coffee
good.
chat.
Oh, yeah, the coffee chat's August 9th, 7th. I should have come a little more prepared. You put it in the
Okay.
Friday letter.
It is in the Friday letter, so, yeah.
Yeah,
5th,
And-
6th, it's on the 7th.
the coffee chat's on the
Because it's
7th,
on a
and it's on a
Friday, and the first day of school is the
And we had a
Wednesday.
really good conversation last coffee chat in the spring. And I'm hoping here at the end of the month to get out an email to everybody in the region to try to encourage again their attendance. We didn't have a lot of people show up, but we had like 3 other school corporations. So I thought that was a win. So, yeah, hope you guys can make it. Look at your schedule, see, I think it's 8:30 in the morning on August 7th, and it lasts a little over an hour. So, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Principal and directors report.
I just wanted to thank our custodians for working so hard in our buildings on campus this summer. It's coming together and we're excited for students. Summer band started yesterday, so if you're out and about on campus the next 2 weeks, students will be outside marching band. You'll hear Toledo. It always just feels like school's right around the corner. You'll be here.
And they're in a different location, so they're actually right outside, the north side of WCC. We cut down one tree there to make that possible. Need to cut down trees, but needed to do it. But I didn't go out the last couple of days to see them, but I think it's a good space for them.
I got started today, he picked up the gator and was excited, and so yeah, they're moving forward over there, and not only, like Kelly said, we're working with schools, but as you can look around, you can see the custodians have been here painting also, I mean, so they do a lot of work. People think just in the summertime they're just doing nothing, but it's the busiest time of the year. We actually don't too quick, it's too hard in the summer.
Ricardo, who's a bus driver for us and a coach, he came to me one day, well, I saw him at the high school, he said, man, Jeremy, these people work really, he was sweating, he said, these people work really hard. I was like, yes, they do, yes, they do.
And
So,
it's 90 something outside.
yes,
Right.
it's not chilly, that's for sure.
Director of Operations report.
I'll just speak for Jim. Dr. Summers obviously is not here, but we have in front of you your fund summary. And then also your cash flows. Just want to point out a couple things in your cash flows. I do want to say just really quickly that these are still actuals as far as the months. You see June, and then projections based upon past expenditures. What you won't see yet, unfortunately, for the education fund is a reflection of the dollars saved from positions that we no longer have with us, and there are several of those. And so that will start picking up in the month of August, where we'll start to see that savings and have a better projection moving forward to what end of the year is going to look like. But if you see, because of the change we made, the EdOps transfers, that education, we protected that, but you will see operations taking a significant hit. One thing I'll talk about in a moment, well, I'll just go ahead and talk about that. So, is this next month, we'll be bringing before you a GEO bond, right? So our net AV has increased again in 2026. That's a good thing. We do expect that to drop in the coming years, but while we still can, while that net AV is where it is, we're going to go grab some money, just like we did last year. We did our bleacher project. Tax rate will still remain the same. We're looking at about $1.2 million as far as the amount that we're going to ask to borrow. But I say that to say that will allow us to move some typical operations expenditures into the bond world, therefore protecting cash in our operations account. So for example, we need a special education bus, a lift bus. That'll be something that we're going to be looking at potentially with that bond, this GEO bond that we're going to bring before you. Some other things that we're looking at, our track is in dire need of resurfacing. It's in bad shape, and so we need to address that. That's not something we can wait on any longer, but we don't want to take that out of operations, right? We see that, so we've got this is the perfect chance to do that. We've got boilers at both LSP and the Career Center that are on their last leg, and so we need to address those needs. That may end up being a little bigger than what we thought originally, so Daryl's been getting some kind of overview pricing on some of those things. The WCC bathrooms need addressed. One thing that we're looking at as a potential opportunity with WCC is using their restroom remodel as almost a pilot of what could be within our high school building. I know, and obviously we have the same concerns as far as vaping. Please know, first of all, that's not a unique issue to vape.
No,
high
it's
schools.
not, no.
It is everywhere. You talk to any administrator of any high school or middle school, anywhere in the state of Indiana, or even nationwide, and they will tell you the very same thing. It's something we struggle with. It's not nearly as hard as it was back in the day to pull out the lighter and light a cigarette. Like it's easy, right? You can hide it. In fact, companies make it easy to hide them because they put them in things that look like highlighters, or you have a hoodie and the string is actually a vape, and so it's hard. It's really hard. But I say that to say that we are looking at the potential, obviously we have a lot of steps to take for this, but there are schools out there that have gone to restrooms that are individual restrooms, they're male and female together, that essentially is a bank of them, Florida sealed doors, that essentially that you could go in, use the restroom, and come out, have a shared wash sink, but each individual stall could have its own vape sensor.
Is WCC doing that?
That's what we're looking at, the
Oh,
potential
okay,
of doing
okay.
there as kind of a model for what could happen later in our high
Great.
school building. But you have a camera, obviously the camera sees who's in the restroom. The issue with vape sensors is essentially you have a bank of stalls within a restroom. You have multiple kids that are in at the same time. It's very difficult to tell when the vape sensor goes off exactly which child was the one who actually did it. And so that's the trouble. But if you had a situation like that, so anyway, we're looking at that as a potential option. We'll bring that before you, of course, as we do this.
Are those vape sensors, in talking to some other people and some other corporations who are dealing with the same thing, the cost of those vape sensors, but if they just had to be for one stall, they perhaps would be less expensive than it for a whole bigger space.
Yeah, typically a bigger space, you're gonna have one in that space, that's the problem. So it's not necessarily cheaper, it'd actually be more expensive if you just have one in each stall, if that makes sense. But the issue again being if it's one vape sensor within, when you have 7 or 8 stalls, that's the difficulty.
Yeah, it's difficult to determine who the
It is, it
recipient
is.
is.
Yes, for sure. Daryl, what am I missing on those projects that we've talked through?
We kind of looked at some other stuff that we could excite the community about that we haven't brought up yet.
Yeah.
And I think we should wait on that, but
Sure.
there's some fun things coming up, I think we can.
Yeah, we've talked about some pretty cool things that I think could be really awesome for our community and for our people.
Kind of
kids.
around Spartanburg area, so.
Yeah, there's some fun stuff there we can do. So anyway, so I will keep you abreast of that as it unfolds, but we're working with Baker Tilly and Ice Miller on what that process looks like. Obviously, we have to close within the 2026 calendar year to make sure that happens. If you remember, our state legislators passed a new law that essentially has a cooling off period for GO bonds. Unfortunately, the 2024 bond, the date of closure essentially ended up pushing that first payment to us was in January of 2025, I believe. And so that essentially puts this bond being in 26 during that 2-year cooling off period, right? So we can't go get a short-term GO bond. Generally speaking, I want to bring this to you, we pay it off in a year and be done with it, right? Why that net AV is there, therefore that we don't have to carry that debt forever. We can take on some additional debt later. The way around that essentially is to front load your payments. And what I mean by that is take out a 5-year GO bond that is not subject to that cooling off period. We pay the majority of that GO bond back within year 1. And then year 2, 3, 4, and 5 would be very small payments that really don't touch your debt much at all. That's the way to kind of get around that cooling off period in this sense.
I didn't realize the GO bonds with the cooling off, they're a 2-year?
Correct. Yeah, I have my opinions as to
Yep,
what I think
yep.
about that, but, they're squeezing us on the operations side, obviously with property tax reform, and they're squeezing us on the bond.
I just don't know
borrowing
if
side as well.
legislators thought about that. If they thought about if you had a good year and your net AV was high, that would allow corporations to take out money and do those things and pay back quicker, which would address their concern that I think is unfounded in that they think schools are carrying too much debt. So if you could, I just wonder if they even thought about that.
Yeah, because you're so right. I mean, generally
Yeah.
speaking, we would come, just like we did last year, take out the GO bond payback in a year,
Right.
open, close, done, where net AV is higher, no one sees any impact on their tax rate, we're
Yeah.
in good shape. Unfortunately, we can't do that any longer.
We are also looking at cleaning up some buildings and painting, and maybe a building, and just general stuff to clean up around here, and some small things that we need a couple, maybe a quad to push snow, just some little things like that we
Yeah. Okay, but we'll have that project hearing is scheduled to come before you in the month of August. And so again, we'll have that project description before you. Before then, you can see it, you can look at it, ask questions, all those things, and then we'll bring that before you. And you'll have some steps. This is not like you just went through with the Eastview bond, because that is a controlled project, because it's above the controlled project threshold, which is like $6.5 million or something. This is well below that, and so it's much easier. Building corporation is not involved. it's a pretty easy process for you. It doesn't require a lot of meetings and such as the last one did. A lot less paperwork for Kelly and I, which is really, really good, because that was a lot. I told Kelly, I said, Kelly, I can schedule for you for this new bond, and she looked at me like she was gonna hurt me. So I'm glad she didn't.
My guys might be really excited about tearing down the hut up behind our building to add to.
Oh, I forgot about that one. That is one that we've discussed too as being a potential. I know that's been a concern for quite some time. It's not conducive to storing those things well. Obviously, if we have equipment that we have invested in, we need to make sure we take care of it. And unfortunately, that building doesn't allow us to do that very well. Honestly, we might as well store it outside at times.
You'd be better off.
And so that is something we've discussed as well as being a potential.
Assistant Superintendent's report. You good?
I can just keep going.
Okay, keep going.
Superintendent's report, okay. I got a couple of things here. First of all, Jefferson Tree visited Fayette Central. I know several of you were there, so thank you for those of you who were able to make it. I know it was short notice, so thank you. Long story short, I just want the community to know that Congressman Shreve, let me back up. Part of the process has been obviously to make sure that we turn over every rock and every stone to make sure that we do our community well, right? If we're gonna make some decisions, if we have to make hard decisions, which I hope we never have to do, but at the same time, we understand that sometimes we have to do that, that we've exhausted every option, right? We've looked at everything we can look at, and we've tried hard to make sure that we've sought every funding source possible for any potential projects that could be. And so part of that process, obviously, we hired an engineering firm to look at that water line to Fayette Central because it's of concern. It's one of our largest things that are kind of lying out there that are of concern with our buildings and grounds. And part of that process was the fact that they help you seek funding sources. Jefferson Tree's office is one of those funding sources with the projects that he puts forward. So we worked with them. I did all the applications. And they chose our project. We were hopeful for $2 million, but are still thankful for the 1.15 that they had put forward. They've sent that on, obviously, to the other side of Congress. We'll see where that goes, right? So there's no promise that money and that funding is going to come through. I think the other thing that's important to say is this doesn't guarantee that we're going to use that money towards that project, right? So you'll see next month, in the month of August, we'll have our engineering firm will be here to present to you their findings. So we've talked about it before, but their recommended project would be a $4.1 million project that essentially would connect that Fayette Central to water off of Highway 1 near Walmart there. And again, $4.1 million, 1.15 being the commitment from Jefferson Tree's office. We obviously still have a gap of almost $3 million there, right? So where does that money come from? And so we're still looking for other funding sources, but obviously there's only so many people out there that are going to give you $100. So we'll have that in August. We'll take a look at that. But I want the community to hear that we're working on it. We're trying our best. We're trying to turn over every rock and stone and making sure that we do our due diligence there. But nothing at this point means that we've made any types of decisions long term. Right, in terms of what's next. But we're thankful for Jefferson Tree's work, Congressman Shreve and his office for the work that they've done. Had a movie event with Toy Story, which was really, really great. I think we had over 1,000 folks there. 1,148. It was kind of crazy, but our people were wonderful, and the movie theater was awesome. It was a really good night, a very fruitful event, I think, but very, very good. And so. The gist of the movie is that the toys essentially aren't played with anymore because the kids get new devices. If you haven't seen it, it's really good, but it goes really well with some of our decisions that we've made recently to step back a little bit from screen time. And so, it was a really good night. Lots of popcorn on the floor that we swept up all night long, but it was worth it. So. You may have seen on social media or on billboards and such our We Love Our Schools campaign that's out there. It's been really fun to hear from people that have given testimonial to the work that's happened here at Fayette County Schools over the course of time. Currently, the work that's happening, but also the work that's happened 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, the difference that this corporation has made in the lives of its people. That's been really fun. And so I have a lot of really good ones still coming. So we'll continue to do that through the month of July as we move forward. But if you know people that would want to give a testimonial or such, like, let me know. Shield and Spear magazine should be actually hitting our post offices. If they haven't already today, they're going to tomorrow, so they'll be in the mail. That first edition, and I'm so thankful for our sponsors that have made that possible. And of course, Kate has worked really, really hard over the course of the summer to get that ready. The whole idea was to showcase our people, right? The great things that our people are doing. And so we'll put some things out as soon as I know it's in the mail for sure. We'll put some things out to tease it to make sure people know. Don't throw it away. Look at it. But it's going to hit, I think, about 12,000, doorsteps. And so that's pretty awesome. And Kate, through her fundraising efforts, got a good portion of that paid for, which is pretty awesome. If you haven't seen our difference maker billboards, like I said, Ann said earlier, are up, and so they're all over the county. So I've only seen, I think, 3 of them myself. I haven't seen them all in person, but I had pictures that I posted online today. We have started abatement at Eastview Elementary School, so that asbestos abatement happens. They're willing to connect tomorrow on that a little bit as far as registration next week for Kate. So that does mean our original plan was to hold Eastview's registration outside. Kate's going to do kind of a party outside and do that. We're hopeful to still be able to if weather allows. But that abatement process will be done hopefully a week or so before school starts. So we can get our teachers back in that building. We've been in communication with those teachers, of course. Kate has, but yeah, it's a lot more extensive process than we had at Frazee. But in Frazee's was one that, if you remember correctly, we kind of found it once they'd started. And so we had to kind of change gears and do it as we went. This will get all the abatement finished at the beginning while people are away for the summer, and we'll have to worry about that when kids or staff members are in the building. Daryl, anything with that as far as abatement?
No, hopefully it'll wrap up towards the end of next week. Unfortunately, we're not going to get it done before registration, but they are there moving quite quickly, so hopefully it'll get done early, but I don't think it'll be in time for that.
Yeah. Registration is, of course, next week, Tuesday and Wednesday. And then I do want to remind you of our August work session, so the August 25th, 25th, I think. It's the date I have in my brain. Is that right? August 25th, I believe so. And so that night, hopefully, the hope is Lauren's going to be here a little bit to help you through some goal work. But Kim, hopefully, will have ILEARN data by that point, and IRE3 data that's unembargoed that we can share with you. That's the goal. So usually we get that sometime in July. But whether it's embargoed still at that point will be the question, and if we can discuss it publicly or not. So, but yeah.
How are we doing on staff positions? Because this is usually crunch time about this time, because there are a lot of other corporations in our area that are actively looking for people, and hopefully we won't lose any, but.
Sure. It always happens, unfortunately.
It does always happen.
Yeah, so we're actually in pretty good shape.
Okay.
So we did lose a staff member today that we had on the, no, we didn't lose a staff member, we had her on the agenda to hire her tonight, but she had gotten ripped at the previous district. They let her go, essentially. They called her back, and so she's going to go back there, which is good, but that does open up a position for us currently. And also the other one is, one of the personnel items you approved tonight was the move for Andrew Stanley, who is at Everton Elementary School in our 6th grade, to move to our high school with Ms. Plum, to take Sarah Shaver's position, and help lead our student services department. We're super excited. Andrew's going to be great, but that does obviously open up a position there. And so while we filled one, we created this is unfortunately an opening. So
Andrew will be great in that.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
He's awesome. He has his administrative license. This is not an administrative position, but he does have his admin license. So I think that experience, or at least that knowledge that he's been through that process, will be helpful for him as he helps lead that department. So, but yeah, good question. I'm hopeful.
I work registration often enough, and you give the kid the schedule, and they look all these teachers that they have, and then they get there the first day of school and say, well, excuse me, this but this person is not here and.
Yeah, there's a late summer
Yeah.
scramble sometimes. The good thing is we're in a season of time where a lot of people are reducing force. And so there's not a lot of places to go right now, honestly, as there would be in a traditional summer. And I'm hopeful our culture is such that we don't lose people for that reason. You know, we lose people sometimes because of life circumstances or because of pay or because of geography. We never want to lose people because of culture. And so I think we're in a good place that way, that hopefully people feel loved and valued and appreciated. And that's obviously our goal every day. But we're in a good place right now. So thanks.
No,
Thanks for asking.
I'm glad to hear that, because that's always a concern for HR people right at the beginning of school. It's like, oops.
Yep, for sure. That's all I've got.
Is it good with the cause?
The only thing I would say is I want to thank Jeremy and other principals that are doing all the marketing. It's been great to open up social media and just see a ton of stuff about Fayette County Schools. It's really good. And I encourage our patrons, share so that everybody can see it. And then just to wish all our kiddos who are going to be at the fair and showing animals, and I hope you have a great fair week and have lots of successes.
For sure.
That's it.
May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? May I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Right.